That's so interesting. It's an important point a lot of people don't consider. We can have a lot of spiritual and a lot of creative folks who are not as familiar with self-promotion or sharing just who they are, right? Like, we can use all the non-business words to try and soften this up, but is the fact you do need to get it out there for it to have an impact, and you are creating this to have an impact, right? In some kind of way, even if it's one lovely grandmother going through your tea deck or something. Is there a tea deck, Nick? There should be a tea deck.
We
have one. You have one, Crystal? Okay. Okay. One idea less to create for myself.
We could create a snap deck, like a game of snap with card decks. I got one. Snap match you a tea deck. Raise you a dragon deck. Animal deck.
That'd be awesome. That's very cute. I love that. And so let's chat, because I think publishing is sort of also that in between. I think some people maybe could be under the understanding that you get to a publisher and everything's done, and your deck sells, and you just sit back and watch as things come in. Anna, do you want to start us off on answering this one?
That's definitely a problem I've seen on this journey, and I've worked with business owners with so many different backgrounds and people who are just getting started, and business owners who already have an established business and audience, and so they're familiar with the process of sharing and promoting, and those launches have typically been a lot easier. It's something I'm a lot more clear about these days when I start working with someone. Just there are no false expectations. Some people think if you just help me get this deck on Amazon and then it'll sell itself. Sometimes it happens, and there are things you can do if you optimize it for search engines and it's a bit more mass market product and you do it in a smart way. I've seen it work that way, but it's not always that. Same thing on marketplaces like Etsy. And you can run ads and all those things. Or sometimes there are people who might want to do a Kickstarter launch and they just think, I'm just going to put my deck on Kickstarter and I don't have to do anything, and Kickstarter is just going to magically fund it. Again, sometimes that can happen, but for most people it's not going to be that. So we do need to be prepared to put in the work long term. It's not a one-time thing either. It's okay, first part is the launch, and then we move into the long-term promotional strategy, and it's really a long game. And I think one of the challenges for a lot of creative people is that we really love the creative process. And so that part is really fun. But then when it comes to switching to the business side of things, then all of a sudden it can feel like, I don't really want to do this. And yeah, so there are different ways to deal with that. I think one thing that I'm really passionate about too is helping people find their unique strengths and find ways to leverage those strengths so that they can promote and market with ease and with passion as well. The other thing is definitely getting the support you need where you need it, and also finding ways to make it work for what you need. Someone who's really busy and has a really busy schedule might benefit from methods that help them save time and scale more in that way as well. But anyway, there's no one size fits all answer, especially marketing as well. But there's a lot more I could say, but I'll just hand it over back to you.
Absolutely. It does feel like there's a lot to be said also, because of course, marketing and creating a community, there's huge amounts of study and whole university degrees and many universities going towards this idea. And when we're the sole creator of something, looking to gain all those skills, it's a lot to expect of ourselves to think that we're just going to understand everything. So I just want to go back to something Nick said as well, which was actually just get the experience and be sharing and putting things out there, because it does start to teach you and just starts to bring people forward, and that action has to be taken rather than that kind of, the analysis paralysis of the perfect way to launch or the perfect way to get your first deck. There might be 5 decks stuck in the back of your mind that are waiting for that first deck to come out so they can come out and play, right? Nick, I'm seeing you nodding just because I mentioned you want to talk.
I'm like, these speech thought bubbles are popping out of my head as you say all these things. Honestly, that is, the first thing is, I would say, is you need to start promoting and being on social from the moment of inception of your idea. If you haven't already got that, don't tell yourself, and so many people do this, I'll start that when I launch the deck. That is a kiss of death, doom of gloom, stroke of genius that you've applied to your project. Start now, because you're going to get bruised, you're going to get beaten up, you're going to get emotionally derailed by the whole experience. Get used to it, right? Get yourself a coach to tell if that's a problem for you. You need to get bloody and get hurt and get ignored, because social media platforms are killing you. They are throttling you. So even you think, like, I've done this over 15, 20 years, different projects. And it's changed. It's got so damn hard. You need to, and anyone that tells you how to do it, I honestly don't believe them. Tells you the algorithm works like that. It's all a lie. They don't know. You just have to do it, and you have to believe, and you have to be passionate, and you have to know why you're doing it, right? I mean, I wrote down 3 things. So why are you doing this? Are you doing this for money, right? Is this because that's maybe a misplaced goal, but it's a good goal. At least you have this, like what you're trying to achieve. Are you doing it to help people? And people have a clear. Some people flip between one or the other, or are you doing it just to feel good? There's an ego element to creating a product. It's amazing. A lot of people are like, oh, I've got a deck, and then they've met their criteria. It's like I've bought a course. I've got a therapist. These are bragging rights, and having a deck is in some ways. So dig in. Why are you doing this? It's a hard question to ask. Know what you're actually aspiring to achieve, I would say. I also think people have a tendency to forget that they're already standing in their tree of knowledge, and they're up at the top of the tree, and everyone else is down at the bottom on the ground looking for the low-hanging branches. So pitch it way less complicated than you're thinking. And often people create things that are too complicated. Make it accessible to people. There is a bigger market out there. There's a huge market. To something like the Tarot Oracle label can be very segregating and discriminating, but actually the value of what you bring may have a broader appeal. So if you've got the skills to create a deck, there can be the case that there's a much broader market to it. It's up to you to figure out, right? Depends what your mission is, what your passion is.
I love the idea that we're increasing accessibility and bringing more Oracle awareness to the masses, even just by approaching more decks with that idea, right? That we're sort of, Oracle Fest is doing the same kind of thing. We're trying to bridge the gap.
Exactly, right.
Make this a little more normalized. And there's the starters up on the mountain, the Oracle Mountain, are familiar. Hey, old friend. But there's also curiosity in the lands below, right? There's so much. And if people aren't sure how to grab that first branch, it looks very sharp and hooky and kind of scary. And so they're just going to be like, I'll hang out and wait for something to drop. And perhaps that accessible version of what you're doing is the thing to drop. Or it's just maybe the way you're relating to how you're using it. Maybe you throw your deck in with your purse and you show how you pull one sneakily underneath your desk at work before your day gets started. Or bringing the idea of actually how can we interact with this in a way that just feels like commonplace. I'm going to go get my coffee. I'm just going to go grab my deck, right? Like that could be the way that we all start relating to things. Crystal, I'm so curious what's on your mind. I see you brewing as well.
I've been curiously listening, and it's been fascinating to hear everyone's responses. So as far as the selling and marketing goes, any publisher is definitely going to be seeking that you have some kind of a platform and way to be selling and marketing your deck. It is super, super important because publishers, even the big publishers, we contribute some sources toward that, have support, you have people you can talk to. We're definitely going to be calling people we know, reviewers, etc. We're going to be working it. But the reality is that creators are the best people at selling their product because they've already got a dedicated platform, hopefully, of people who want to hear what they have to say and who are interested in that. Just this week, I turned down 2 creators that had really great projects because they had no social media, no website, no nothing. And the concept was do the deck first and do it later, Nick, just like you said, right? And you're just like, you can't do that. Not everyone has to be a TikTok influencer with 1 million people. Don't stress yourself out thinking you've got to get there, but you can get even 500, 1,000 people, and it doesn't have to be on standard social media if that's not your thing. I hear great things about Substack, and that's something that we're looking at really seriously. If you're more into blogging or writing, keep a blog, go do podcast interviews, run a really good website, you go do talks. There's other things you can do if turning on a camera and being the TikTok star isn't your thing. I appreciate that's not for everybody. You need to have some way to be able to get the word of your work out there. And Nick, I wanted to add one more thing to the list of reasons that people do this. Are you publishing it, right? So we talked about for the money or help people or just bragging rights to say you do it. But one of the best reasons is because it supports work that you're already doing, right?
That's true.
You are a life coach, and now there's a life coach deck, which is going to help your clients and to your prestige and makes you more legitimate as a creator, gets your name out there more. Are you going to bring in some income from the deck? Yes. Right. But the reality is that most creators just don't make mortgage payment royalties on their decks. That's just reality. So it should be something that you view as a supplement, I think, to what it is that you're already doing.
The deck is a new book.
Exactly. It's a book, right? With people. So.
You now need to have 7 books to be credible because 1 book wasn't enough. But you can actually, part of my thinking is you can actually be more differentiated in the deck space because it's still early. Then if you're in a book, you need to have several books to be credible by that because it's just a norm by now, right? The other one I was going to throw into your comment about platforms you're on is Patreon. I love what they're doing, and he talks about there can be an audience of 1,000 people is enough to create a living from. You can think that you need millions of people on TikTok or YouTube, and there's another way of doing it, and Patreon definitely supports that. But you're never going to find these things by being a shrinking violet. You need to be out there. The other thing I was going to throw into that mix as well was collaboration. One of the best ways of, if you're not the superstar that you want to be, is to find 30 or 40 people who want to collaborate with you, and then you launch a joint project, right? And then you're borrowing 30, 40 people's audiences to bring this forward, right? That's a very effective technique, and especially if you kickstart that type of stuff, right? I think I mentioned Ali Tarot is an example of a deck that had 100 plus authors, and that drove it to being the top selling Kickstarter ever with 20,000 units out of the gate. That's very, very compelling, right?
That's a beautiful idea as well for sharing community, right? That if there are people who align with your message and there's this idea of collaboration that you share, that the idea is actually not that the Oracle deck has to sell and do a certain thing, but that the certain thing it might be doing is actually just allowing people to see the work you're already doing. So I'm glad you brought that through, Crystal, as well, because also it can be easy to get bogged down. Hey, we're in project mode. We're on the book. We're on the Oracle deck. Well, let's just laser into that. Have you forgotten that you're helping heal the world? Have you forgotten that you're creating a beautiful impact and that this is actually your soul work, and that being connected to that is very important throughout the process, including in the marketing, including in the publishing process, of course, right? And so I thought